Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3, long-awaited episode 3 of the ATRL Charts podcast.
Yay! Hey everyone, it's Hair55 here.
And this is you, Mitch, as well. Everybody, thanks for tuning in and being patient with us. So thanks for joining us.
I am Alexander Ao, and we're glad to be recording. We tried to record the Saturday before last, but there were some pretty major audio and technical issues that we think, and we said this after the first and second episodes, but we think that we've gotten them resolved by now.
Let's hope so.
All right, so it only makes sense to start today talking about the new Hot 100, just put out a few hours ago. And the main storyline to go along with that is Lana Del Rey's new release, High by the Beach, debuting at number 7 despite being projected originally to sell around 70,000 copies and have minimal streaming and no airplay. It debuts in the top 10. What's your take on this?
Queen Lana always wins! So first of all, congratulations to the one and only Lana Del Rey for making this really unexpected debut. Wow, what an amazing start. I'm very happy because you don't see quite often, Lana Del Rey in top 10. So every way she's there is always a celebration. But it's definitely weird. I'm still going to wait till tomorrow when Billboard refreshes their charts. Because I mean, more than 200,000 copies like that. I talked with Keyword before this, and he told me that he thinks that those sales are definitely not coming from iTunes. So who knows? I'm still shocked.
Well, that's odd. So 248,000 downloads, which would put it at the second best sales week for the year, just right behind One Direction's Drag Me Down, which slides this week on the Hot 100. But when I saw that, I said, "Wow, that's a huge number," and especially when K-Warp predicted about 70,000 copies for the week. And I mean, I think I've seen a lot of people in the thread said maybe the extra sales came from pre-orders, which could have happened. But again, it's a whole variable of situations. It could be a combination of the pre-orders. It could be people actually rushed to another digital retailer and bought them. Who knows? Or it could be another case where Nielsen actually screwed up the data, because as we've seen with such situations like Lean On and most recently All Eyes on You by Meek Mill, their data wasn't consistent. Like, it was high, then it dropped, and then it went back up the previous week. So who knows? It could be a Nielsen error, but we're just as shocked as everyone else. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, to me, this doesn't make much sense at all. I looked at the figures in terms of where it was, and it only led, for around a day, I think, a little more than that. It definitely didn't lead long enough or buy enough to sell 248,000, which, is basically, if give or take, around double of what Can't Feel My Face and Cheerleader sold. And it just doesn't make sense that it would be coming from the pre-orders, because it wasn't even that high before it was officially released.
Right.
And then if you're talking about other digital retailers, we all know that iTunes is a huge share of the digital music market. It's at least, it doesn't make sense at all, because and then you look at the charts on Amazon and Google Play, and you find out that it's roughly in the same position as it is on iTunes, in the 50s or 60s, after dropping from the initial release. And it's really curious that it's accumulated, because clearly we know that all of its chart points basically are from sales. The video hadn't come out yet when the tracking period ended. Spotify, it was in the top 50 for one day and no airplay. So it's pretty much from sales. And that's why this is really shocking, and why we're going to dig deep and look for answers. Right now, I think most probably it was because of a Nielsen error. That's my honest guess, is that it's because of a Nielsen error.
Right.
Because I don't see a reason why the sales would go from 70,000 to 248,000. I heard some people saying that, relying on K-Warp for sales predictions, he's an ATRL member, why would you rely on him? He's been right, like, really, over the past few years, very consistently, to the 1,000, really. So, relying on his predictions is not that big of a deal, in my opinion, because they've been right so often, and by so, like, they've been right on the dot for all these songs.
Right.
This just reeks of suspicion to me.
And case of iTunes payola, so that's it.
I mean, that's obviously situation number 3. iTunes payola always comes into effect. But no, and then another thing is the song was not on sale for the whole tracking period, because I think Friday is the release date for all songs, and her song came out on a Monday. So again, it's like, wow, she sold 250,000 downloads in just 3 or 4 days. Wow. So we're not trying to flame bait or troll or anything. We're just looking at things from different angles. Like, wow, this was a huge shocker. But I mean, if this stays tomorrow, when they refresh the charts and she's still number 7, then hey, I guess she sold 250,000 downloads in a week. So congratulations.
I know she has a loyal fan base, and I do believe she's a force, because I know that she has a lot of a loyal fan base, but that just doesn't make sense. I mean, West Coast debuted with 120,000. I don't remember pretty well, and debuting with this sales claimate with more than 200,000 is just way too much. I think Billboard just made a mistake, and I hope. I mean, they're wrong if they made a huge mistake, because if she really didn't debut in top 10, it's like, what? I mean, don't troll with us.
It's really bad for the fans.
Yeah.
Not only is it misleading, but then you look at people who maybe don't follow the charts as much. Maybe they don't follow the charts as much. And it really confuses people when you have a song that debuts at number 7 and potentially is not there the following day. It makes no sense. And the same thing goes with the streaming errors that happened with Lean On, that happened with All Eyes on You, that happened with Thinking Out Loud earlier in the year. It really doesn't help for people who are not, avid chart watchers. It confuses everyone. So just hopefully we get an answer tomorrow. Obviously, there's been no official comment from Billboard regarding the reasons why it debuted that high. Besides, it did sell 248,000, which it may have well done that. But then we have to go and look at, why didn't we know that it was going to sell that much? Why did we make such a drastic mistake in terms of our predictions? So we'll have a look at that tomorrow. We'll know more about the situation, hopefully. Very mysterious. Definitely the number 1 chart mystery or curiosity of the year for me.
What do you think is the future of the song? I mean, where is it gonna be next week?
Well, the iTunes performance isn't looking very encouraging at the moment. I
just don't want to refresh the iTunes page. It's just sad. I love the song and just sad.
Well, it's at 55. That's not very high. So it's gone. It's gone from being the number 1 to being number 55. I think it'll probably, unfortunately for Lana, do something similar to a West Coast and drop out in a couple of weeks. Really hasn't shown any indications of getting any airplay. That's normal because Lana hasn't gotten airplay, aside from the Summertime Sadness remix. And then the streaming probably, just one day in the Spotify Top 50 or just dropped out. I don't know. I'd be surprised if it spends 5-6 weeks on the Hot 100, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not saying the longevity. If there's no airplay behind it, she had the same kind of similar situation with West Coast, where just a debut high just fell out the chart because there was no pop airplay attached to it, and it's kind of like, why don't her label, push her to pop radio? I mean, she had success there once, so. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, if the iTunes positions is any indication of the future of the song, then yeah, it's gonna drop pretty huge next week.
I honestly don't think she's going to drop out just like that. She's going to have her first full week of streaming after the video premiere on Thursday. I thought she was increasing on Spotify. If I don't know, I guess I was.
There was one day in the top 50. It was at number 48, and then it just dropped out. So I don't know what it is right now.
I guess. And sales and airplay, well, we better don't talk about it because I think just streaming is going to keep her alive another week. So for Soko, she's going to keep her record safe.
Yeah, that's a record that's gonna be hard to break. That record going from I think nine to out. Yeah, just a sticky situation with that one too. All right, and we move to another new release. One Direction's "Drag Me Down." Reaction to that debuting at number 3 and then dropping 24 spots this week.
I mean, it's normal. I mean, for them, I'm not surprised. I saw that they had a huge week, and then I knew that the sales would slide pretty huge because that's One Direction. They have a huge fan base that goes out and buys the song, and then after that, it's just kind of up to the general public and the people who are listening to the radio to buy the song if they want to buy the song. But it's doing well. It's top 10 on Spotify, so it is a legitimate hit, as people are saying in the iTunes thread and the other charts thread. So I think it's gonna bounce back. I'm not surprised at this huge drop, but with the radio support that they're getting, because it seems like the radio really, really loves the song, and the fact that there's no video yet just tells me it's going to be back on the rise. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back into the top 10 later this fall. But yeah, I'm not that surprised at the drop at all.
Yeah, I'm agree. I mean, of course, it's going to have a massive debut, because debuting at number 3 is massive, because it has a lot of hype and their huge fan base, and things got drop out, and it actually dropped a lot. I was expecting kind of less spots. But well, it's One Direction. They're going to be fine. I think that the song has some future. It's being well received by the general public, it seems to me. I think it has a good future on pop radio. It's kind of stable actually on iTunes, and it's doing quite well on Spotify. And as you said, the music video hasn't premiered yet. So there's a still future for this song. I mean, One Direction is still alive without saying.
Yeah, I found it surprising that they sold as much as they did in the first week, up over 300,000 comfortably. The power of teenage girls, I guess, cannot be underestimated, because in today's sales market, that's really impressive. But I think something to note is that if a few years ago, if a song had strong sales like that, it could have had a shot at debuting at number 1. But first week sales like that don't guarantee number 1 debuts anymore, even though they may have done that back, say in 2012 with Part of Me.
Yeah, because right now I think Billboard has a more robust way of ranking popularity. Instead of having sales be like a very, very dominant factor, now you need sales and streams and airplay to have a sure shot of debuting at number 1. I mean, Taylor Swift would have debuted at number 1 with her sales regardless, because she sold over 500,000 copies, and she was going up against a relatively weak number 1 at the time. But the fact that she had the streams, which I think she did 18 million streams in the first week, was shaking off, and she had a huge start at radio that just solidified the fact that she was able to debut at number 1. So right now, with the sales of 350,000, even that wasn't enough alone to topple, Can't Feel My Face or Cheerleader. So it just goes to show the Billboard is trying to make a well-balanced situation with all 3 metrics, streams, airplay, and sales.
Yeah, sales are dead. So if you want to debut at number 1, you better be Katy Perry or Taylor Swift.
Well,
yeah.
Speaking of surprise releases, one would argue that they might be a little bit risky, more so than regular releases, and that only certain types of artists should go for them. Now, I think that surprise releases create lots of initial buzz, but it's hard to avoid having a front-loaded surprise release. You have a song like Drunken Love, which was not a surprise release itself, but a single off of a surprise release, and it didn't have much longevity at all. It peaked at number 2, but it was very, very front-loaded. And only, I think, if you're an artist like Beyonce, like Drake, like Rihanna, can you afford to put out these releases that without any notice, and still have them become legitimate hits. Because if you're not a star of that scale, of that popularity, then that buzz that you're going to create, might not be as intense, and you might not have the hype to get a hit. Now, I think surprise releases, have definitely carved themselves out a niche in today's music market. They're definitely something that a lot more people are considering, thanks to some of the high-profile ones in the past few years.
Yeah, a surprise release seems to become the thing right now. It has become a very good commercial strategy. It has worked with Beyonce, as you say, Drake, Fall Out Boy, now with this week with Dr. Dre, and last week with One Direction. In my opinion, it works, but just if you're an established artist, if you have already built your audience and you have a loyal people who's going to be aware of you, you're going to be fine. Now put this case, if Kesha did this right now, I wouldn't be so sure because she has lost that level of popularity she used to have back in 2010. That's just an example.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You have to have some type of established following and some type of established fan base to do that. Like One Direction, surprise release single, bam, it hits number 1 within 20-30 minutes, breaking the record to number 1. You have to have that solid fan base who's going to be loyal to you and go and buy your stuff. And also, I think another benefit when you surprise release, going along with those people who are established, like a Beyonce, Drake, and One Direction, I think it minimizes the risk for piracy because the album goes, or the single goes straight to digital retailers, and some people may say, "Oh my God, this song or this album is on iTunes. I'm about to buy it." I don't think some of them will be that patient to wait for someone to actually rip it and upload it to some, file sharing website. I think they'll just actually go to iTunes and purchase it and, kind of create this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This pulse envy. So I think that's definitely a benefit, especially if they can minimize piracy as much, as much as possible. So yeah.
Right, because the longer the time that you have between the announcement of a release and then the release itself, the more opportunities there are for people to pirate or illegally access the material.
Mm-hmm.
And with surprise releases, you're just totally eliminating that altogether. Well, actually, you know what? I'll take that back. You're not totally eliminating it. But what you're doing is you're saying, look, here's my album, or here's my song, and you can go buy it now, right? And like you said, people might not want to go through the trouble if they don't even have to wait to buy it.
Right.
So surprise releases can help that way. My one concern about them is that maybe if this happens dozens more times, that the general public might think it's a little tacky or played out. But so far, each surprise release has created renewed energy around each artist. So I think it's worked really well for the artists that have done it so far. If it's done the right way, it can be a huge promotional tool, very effective. And who knows, we may just see that with artists like Rihanna or Adele coming in the near future.
Well, that's if Adele actually release. Yeah, that's if she actually releases, but hopefully.
Right. Yeah, that's not a guarantee. All right. So next thing we want to talk about is number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. We like to talk about this. Today, Cheerleader took back the number 1 spot after Can't Feel My Face had it for a week. Boo, yeah, no, I don't like Cheerleader at all. But Will's Can't Feel My Face returned to number 1, and for how long, and then who takes over after?
So the thrash song is back to number one, bro. Seems like Can't Feel My Face is not true strong enough. Honestly, it's feeling like the weakest number one single this year so far. Personally, I'm a little disappointed. A month ago, I was so sure this song was gonna be number one, pulling big numbers and big lead. But now I'm not so sure. First, I said it was 4 weeks for Cheerleader and 7 for Can't Feel My Face. But I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being the opposite. I think The Weeknd is gonna be back to number one. Haven't made prediction for next week, so I'm not sure if it's gonna be as soon as next week. But I know he's going to be atop for more than a week.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little bit shocked when I saw Cheerleader back at number one, but then when I saw the sales, they literally sold the same amount. Like it was 119 for Can't Feel My Face and for Cheerleader. I said, okay, so that has to mean that Omi is probably ahead in streaming. I didn't actually check the numbers, but yeah, yeah. So it's another thing is like Can't Feel My Face got to number one pretty much through radio and through airplay because he hasn't performed the song yet, and I believe he's scheduled to perform at the MTV Awards, which I think could be his big moment because the album is coming out 2 days before the MTV Awards, so that could fuel the song back to higher popularity and more sales. But at this point, yeah, I agree that this does seem like the weakest number one of the year. I mean, compared to like the Blank Spaces, the Uptown Funk, See You Again, and the Bad Bloods, and the Cheerleader. It's weak, and I'm shocked that the sales aren't as strong as I thought they could be. But it should return to number one. I'm not sure how long it's going to stay there now. I mean, my initial prediction was 6 weeks, but I'm going to have to scale that back to about 3 to 4, maybe 5 weeks, because it could be a situation where they tag team the number one spot for the next few weeks, seeing as their metrics are pretty much the same. Like they're top 2 on radio, they're pretty much the same in sales, but it seems like Cheerleader has the upper hand in streaming right now. So yeah, it should go back to number one, but I don't know how long it's going to stay. I don't think it's going to be one of those long week number ones, maybe 3 to 5 weeks at this point.
I think that, you know what, I've been disappointed by Can't Feel My Face's on-demand streaming. I'm sorry, it's video streaming and its sales. I would really think that based on its high airplay and based on the premiere of the video, that it would go up in both of those metrics. But it hasn't. So despite having a comfortable lead on Spotify and on on-demand streaming, Can't Feel My Face loses an overall stream to Cheerleader because its video isn't racking up any views. And the sales aren't high at all, around 120,000. And that's bad. Even for this climate, you know, we've had number ones that are selling around 160, 170,000 this year.
I mean, the Hills is almost higher on streaming than Can't Feel My Face. They're almost like close to each other, and that's bad.
I know. Can't Feel My Face, for some reason, doesn't really seem to have a foothold on any... I didn't even watch the video, and I think
that's bad. You don't even watch it.
Yeah. I mean,
so despite being,
I'm sorry. I mean, it's bad. It's not as bad as. It's not as bad as say the Selena Gomez video where it does not feature A$AP Rocky at all. But I mean, the Can't Feel My Face video is just okay. It really has no replay value in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that Can't Feel My Face kind of feels not really like a number one. Despite being number one on radio, it doesn't have that, like, it doesn't feel huge. It doesn't feel like a number one to me. It's very close with Cheerleader, only ahead by 5 million, and perhaps that's why it doesn't feel like a number one. But it's well ahead on Spotify. It's been up there for almost 40 days now at number one on Spotify. And it's had strong sales numbers this whole time, but for some reason it can't get that extra push it needs.
Yeah, video streaming for Cheerleader seems very strong. Very strong.
That too.
Yeah.
Streaming for Omi has been what's kept him at number one for, I think this is the 5th week that he'll be up there. So I think that following Cheerleader and Can't Feel My Face, I think the next number one, back when we recorded podcast 2, we didn't really have a clear candidate for that. I think now we do. I'm going to say it's Locked Away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be Locked Away. I mean, I heard the song. I'm not a fan, but speaking objectively from a chart perspective, it's showing the signs already of building the strong sales. Like it's right now it's number 2, right behind Can't Feel My Face, at 0.83 percentage points. So it's definitely selling well. It's just airplay has to catch up, but it's an Adam Levine song or it's a song with Adam Levine in it. So I don't see the problem with airplay being a hindrance with this song. And I believe the video just came out a few days ago, so it's gonna take a few weeks for that to build up, and we can see this at number 1 as early as September, depending on how fast this goes. But I think this will be number 1 within the next few weeks to a month or so.
Yeah, we're too unique. I'm not a big fan of the song. So Adam has another hit in his hands, and I feel he hasn't stopped getting hits this decade. He's all over the radio with Adam Levine and the band. And now with this song that is on fire on radio, I wouldn't be so sure if it's going to be number 1 on lock. But for me, its problem it's streaming. Yeah, it's gaining on iTunes, but sales don't guarantee you to rule the Hot 100 anymore. So far, it's looking like a potential strong contender, definitely. I mean, it seems like the only one right now. It's probably gonna outpeak Stereo Hearts, which is a shame, since Lock Away is a shit version of Stereo Hearts.
I mean, I think that Locked Away, I think so far I've been surprised by how well it's doing on Spotify. Already increasing several dozen spots since its debut there. I've been impressed by that because I don't think that's the type of song that would stream strongly normally. So I think that's definitely the strongest contender we've got for right now. Like Harris said, I'm not going to say it's definitely going number 1, but it's got a good chance to. Looking at the top games on overall radio besides it, following Locked Away, you have Lean On, which is not going to hit number 1. It's going to peak too soon for that. We have The Hills, perhaps in the future, and then Photograph, which, I would be surprised to even see go top 5. So I think Locked Away is definitely the strongest contender we got right now. Next, we're going to talk about yet another new release, but not, well, technically not a new release, but a new single, the 5th single from 1989, Wildest Dreams.
Good to see Taylor going on full this era, and it's good to see her wanting to continue the sledge of 1989, because previous era she just stopped releasing after 4th single or 5th single, and she released like a tour video for those singles, and that was like, I thought she was going with the fan favorite New Romantics, which in my opinion had bigger possibilities to become another one this era, but oh well. Now, with Wildest Dreams, I was seeing some reactions saying the choice was risky, something I don't understand. I mean, yes, the song has this slow, up-tempo sound, but nothing risky. Everything in 1985 sounds like a radio candy. Possible pick for Wildest Dream, I think in the better case is gonna peak in top 5. There are more than 5 million of copies of 1989 sold already in the US, so many persons already own the single. Streaming is going to help it, but how much? I'm not sure. She has had a crazy streaming monster era with her videos, with the exception of the motherhood style. For me, it feels hard to repeat the same success of monsters like Bad Blood, Shake It Off, and Blank Space. They already create a lot of hype with a bunch of celebrities on Bad Blood, and it's not going to be easy to happen again.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, okay, now she's literally a year into the era because Shake It Off turns 1 I think today or tomorrow. So congratulations on a huge, huge successful air, and I'm sure there are many more singles to come. Um, Now with this fifth single, Wildest Dreams, we talked about the situation. Well, we tried to with our last podcast, but it didn't work. But we discussed this possibility. Okay, will she release it just straight from the album, or will there be a remix like she did with Bad Blood? And many people are speculating that Calvin Harris will do a remix with the song, which will be interesting. Um, if she releases it as is, I'm not really seeing it being a very, very strong single. Just because the album sales are going to cannibalize the single sales on iTunes and other digital retailers. Um, I mean, it could pull a style, which I mean will still be a huge success considering the album has sold 5.1 million copies here in the U.S. So anything, even if it gets in the top 10, that's already exceeding a lot of people's expectations at this point. And if she has a killer video like she did with, Blank Space and Bad Blood, she could be in contention again for another number one because, as we know, her first week streaming numbers from, like, for example, Bad Blood, Blank Space, and with Shake It Off, they were huge. So if she's gonna go all out for this single like she did with the previous ones minus Style, I don't see why she can't contend for number one and get her fourth number one from the album. If she doesn't plan to hype this song and just let it go on its own course, I could see it pulling the Style at best, but maybe a top 20 hit. And again, that will be amazing considering the circumstances.
And I think it makes you realize, like, how much of a factor streaming is now. You look at the first week streaming numbers that Bad Blood pulled, helped it to number one. Mm-hmm. Now, this makes it all the more puzzling that she didn't put as much effort into the video for Style, because I honestly thought, based on the sound of that would be a surefire number one. Well, it was on pop radio, but not on the Hot 100 because it wasn't well-rounded enough. It was an airplay-driven hit, and it didn't have the strong screaming that you need to go number one in this day and age. Now, I think that I'm not totally sure whether the same amount of effort that went into Bad Blood and Blank Space will go into Wildest Dreams, because anything at this point, any success on the Hot 100 is a bonus. This is already one of the most successful eras of the decade, with 3 number 1 singles, 4 top 10 singles, 5 million copies of the album. Everything was a bonus. So if I were to make my best projection at this point, I'd honestly say I think it peaks around number 5 or 6. And that's not taking anything away from her potential to come up and surprise us and get that number 1.
No shade, but she better follow female Michael Jackson steps of Teenage Dream era, and she releases a remix and make a discount.
Yeah. And speaking of Taylor, Shake It Off has had really good longevity, amazing longevity. Frequently top 70, 80 on iTunes, and still charting in the top 60, 70 of several radio formats if you include recurrence. And now that it's been around for a year, it seems like a good time to bring it up. It's just had amazing longevity, better than any of the other 2014 number ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just amazing how that song has been able to cross over within generations, like the teens, the young adults, and the older crowd. It's like we've had things that go viral with this song, and actually a graduation. There was this song used in a graduation ceremony. So it's definitely touched a lot of people, and a lot of people on ATRL don't like to admit that, but you have to take yourself away from the computer screens for a second and look into the real world. And even my mom, she's not really a big Taylor Swift fan, but she loves Shake It Off. My mom she's 55. So that just goes to show you, I mean, I'm not speaking for the whole, like, GP, but it just goes to show you how much the song has impacted people and why it's been able to last a long time in streaming, in sales, and in recurring airplay. So all of that has contributed to the longevity of the song.
Yeah, really, a classic. I mean, I feel it's going to be, if not her signature hit, is one of her most successful hits in her career. I think most of this longevity comes because one is a lead single from Taylor Swift, the great Taylor Swift first entire pop album. Two is the type of songs with inoffensive lyrics. Three, it's catchy as hell and has universal appeal, as you said. And four, it's viral appeal. I mean, you see a cat, a police officer, or any artist lip sync the song and it goes viral. It's just fun to see.
Yeah, so the success of Shake It Off has just been remarkable. I don't think any of us can say rightly that we expected this when it was released a year ago. And it just makes it all the more fun to watch for Taylor. She's had, an amazing era, and we'll see how she follows it up. But that's something to talk about in the far future.
Funny because haters say it was going to be front-loaded, and see it.
And it's ended up having the most sales longevity of any 2014 number one, selling better than Happy, selling better than All of Me, selling better than All by the Bass. Just really, really good sales longevity. And now we'll move on to talk about some of the new singles from Drake. He released 4 new songs to iTunes following his much publicized feud with Meek Mill. So, what do we think of the new singles? What do we think of the feud?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna start with the feud. It's honestly, I think it's stupid. Drake is so much more above this nonsense. I don't follow the feud. I know Meek was upset because Drake did not tweet that his album was released, so Meek felt some type of way and went on a rampage. And then Drake released this song, and it went back and forth. But honestly, I just think that whole situation is just stupid, And then, it just, I guess they're kind of feeding off each other for publicity because, ironically enough, there's a single on Meek Mill's album called Rico that features Drake, and it's actually on the top 50 in Spotify. So that's kind of an awkward situation if that actually becomes a hit on the Hot 100, or if it becomes like a sustained hit. As far as the singles, Back to Back obviously was the biggest of the 4 when it was released that week. When the biggest when those singles were released that week, but it seems like Hotline Bling is starting to overtake it on iTunes, and I don't think Hotline Bling has any radio airplay at the moment. I mean, maybe a few stations playing it here and there, but it looks like the public is speaking that Hotline Bling is single material, and personally, I like it better than Back to Back. Back to Back was the diss track that Drake released addressing the quote-unquote feud between the two. But it looks like that hype has kind of died down, and Hotline Bling is starting to come out of the ashes, if you will. And it will be interesting to watch to see if radio leeches onto this song, because Drake is pure radio candy for urban and rhythmic. Like, everything he releases is a hit there. Like, there's no denying, and he already has the streaming power. I just doubt that if it is a single, if radio makes it a single, he probably may not shoot a video for it because he probably just released this as for fun, if you will. So we may not see a video for it, and if he does, the video will probably come out in February because that's how Drake operates. So, but yeah, I think Hotline Bling has a chance to be a huge hit.
Yes, that's what I think. I mean, the general public is like thirsty for Hotline Bling specifically. It has potential. I mean, more than Back to Back, and it's because Back to Back had this controversy behind it. But with Hotline Bling, I see it performing quite well on Hot 100. I mean, streaming is going to keep it alive. And Drake wins, as usual.
And I actually found it surprising that they decided to push Back to Back to Urban Rhythmic and send it for ads, because it honestly felt like a very temporary event to me, just released to complement the feud they were having on Twitter. But instead, that his label decided to send it to radio. And it turns out that even though it's gaining pretty well on both urban and rhythmic, it's been having pretty steady positive updates. Hotline Bling has already overtaken it on both Spotify and iTunes. It's number 8 on Spotify, Hotline Bling. And I think it's around, let's see where it is on iTunes, because I've forgotten. It's 21 on iTunes compared to number 30 for back-to-back. So Hotline Bling is doing better on both streaming and sales, and I think soon the label will have to realize that that's happening and then send Hotline Bling to radio, because otherwise we'll have kind of a dual single situation, and it'll be messy, and neither one will be a huge hit.
Yeah, and honestly, that's typical Drake. That's typical Cash Money. That's just how he operates. Like when Take Care came out a few years ago, we didn't know what the next single was because radio was just playing everything. Literally, they were playing Take Care. They were playing The Motto, which was a huge hit. They were playing Crew Love with The Weeknd, and all these singles. So it was like everything was a single at the same time, and I don't think Cash Money really aims for plans. They just let things go as they go. So if Hotline Bling actually gets airplay, it may just be on the account of radio stations just picking it up randomly, and it just becomes a hit on radio. But yeah, this is just typical Drake and typical Cash Money behavior. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Hotline Bling got an ads date. It could just be picked up just because of the Spotify numbers and the sales on iTunes.
It could be a Trophy Water situation because Trophy Water wasn't playing to be a single, and it ended up being one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Umich said, typical Cash Money. Nothing new here. Drake just continues to take advantage of his popularity with these new singles. Moving on to The Weeknd. We already talked about Can't Feel My Face kind of not totally living up to its potential, but The Hills is a song that really could live up to its potential with massive updates early on pop radio and really successful on Spotify.
Yeah, they finally decided to make it official. Finally, The Hills has an amazing feature. Radio is eating it up like crazy. It's getting like 2 million per day. And that could be a problem because it can hurt Can Feel My Face longevity on radio. I don't see The Hills going number 1. I think it's been pulling big street numbers for some time, and that couldn't be good in the near future. It could be early there, and you never know. Abel is slaying and having his best year yet, so I think I see a good future. I'll say top 3 for me.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. You went first.
I was going to say that, with The Hills, it has a very, very promising trajectory right now. As soon as pop radio started to pick it up, the sales started to pick up as well. Like, it was hovering outside the top 10 on iTunes about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and now it's sitting at number 6 on iTunes. Just prancing right on up the chart. But as you said here, I also believe that the streaming could hurt it because it's already over 100 million views on YouTube from the video, and it's been streaming so well for the past few months, like pretty much since it came out earlier this summer. So if it does come close to number 1 or reach the top 3 on the Hot 100. Streaming could limit it, but it's already number 5 right now on the Hot 100, and that you have to think about that as well. It's relatively closer to number 1 than it was weeks ago. So if it does get that close, I just fear that the streaming may kind of hinder it back a little bit. But the fact that this type of song is doing so well right now on pop radio just reinforces the fact that he is very, very much in demand this year.
Yeah, and you wonder if the streaming will suffer near the end of its run because, if you look at the streaming, one would think that being number 2 on Spotify for so long that it's eventually going to fall. But the unfortunate part would be if it starts to fall in streaming while it's, approaching its peak on radio or approaching its peak on iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it gets to number 1 on iTunes, even if it gets to, top 10 on pop radio and number 1 on Rhythmic or something like that, which it probably will do based on its performance so far,
Mm-hmm.
it could still end up missing number 1 on the Hot 100 if its streaming peaks too early. And in that case, I would agree with Hare that it would peak at number 2 or number 3. So I think the next battle for number 1 is going to be Locked Away and The Hills. It'll be fascinating to watch. Locked Away, talked about it earlier. The Hills we're talking about now. So it's good. It's good to see some more competition as we head into the
Men are dominating, like totally dominating this year. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna do our recurring segment. Will It Go Top 10? We basically take 5-7 songs every podcast, talk about their futures, and obviously whether they will go top 10. And this time we're going to start with Disclosure's Omen featuring Sam Smith.
It's going to be a big hit for both acts, but it sounds like a top 10 for me. I see it being an airplay driving hit, so not going to be bigger than Latch.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be airplay driven as well. Just looking at radio numbers right now. I mean, it's kind of climbing radio and pop with the 30 spin increase for today on the published charts. But it's still somewhere in the top 90 on iTunes, and that's not really encouraging right now. But yeah, 83.
Yeah, it's at number 83.
So 83. Right now, it doesn't look encouraging for a top 10 peak, but if radio latches onto the song, like they did with the previous single, then it could scrape a week or two in the top 10, but the sales right now are not looking that promising. I mean, it's doing okay on streaming. It's top 50 there, but I'm not seeing this being a hit with a lot of sales. So top 10 chances for me, I'm going to say 40% right now.
Yeah, I put my top 10 chances at 30%. I think that I do think that it will be a strong airplay hit. I think that it's going to make the top 15, top 10 on overall radio, and then also on pop radio, possibly even go top 5, like Latch did. Latch went all the way to number 3, if you remember, from 2014. But I do think that staying in the 80s and 90s on iTunes all this time isn't really all that encouraging either. And I feel like Disclosure isn't an act that has publicity here in the United States. Mm-hmm. So it'll be hard for them to get far past like 40 or 50 on iTunes, even when the song's at its peak. But maybe I'll be proven wrong, and maybe it can become a huge hit. I would love it. I love the song, but I can see a number 9 or number 10 peak, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, it stalls out on radio, and peaks only around number 30. So really a wide range of possibilities for this song, and I put the chances at 30%. Anyways, our next song that we're going to talk about is Ed Sheeran's Photograph.
Yeah, you know what? I think I said no last time that this would stall out in the top 20, but I was proven wrong as many times before. I do think this could hit top 10. He just performed. He gave a live show in Wembley. I think it was either pre-recorded or live, but it aired on NBC here in the United States, which is huge promo because a lot of people watch NBC on Sunday night. So I see that his album flew back into the top 10 after being down in the 20s and 30s, so that's a good sign. It is still gaining on the singles chart. I believe is at number 11, right behind 679, Fetty Wap. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say the chances are 70-80%, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down that much on radio, even though it's about to hit number 1 on adult pop probably very, very soon. But it's already top 10 on overall radio, and it's still gaining, and he seems to be doing well on streaming. I'm going to say yes, so 70-80% chance.
Yeah, I'm going to give Photograph a 60% chance. I'm not as aggressive as you, Mitch. But the radio performance has been encouraging. He has really become an HAC staple over the past year with Thinking Out Loud, Smashing, Don't Smashing, and now Photograph coming to smash, already number 2 there, and obviously, as mentioned, shortly number 1. I think it'll be big on pop radio as well. The sales are strong. It's just outside of the top 10 at number 11, as you mentioned. And I do think that the streaming is a pleasant surprise. Because Thinking Out Loud, despite being a huge hit across all metrics, streaming was its weakest metric. So to see this encouraging performance from Photograph already in and out of the top 20 on Spotify is encouraging for the future of the song. And it's a better song for fall than it is for summer. So as summer winds down and transition to fall, perhaps, a down tempo like Photograph would be good for radio stations to insert into the rotation. So I will give it a 60% chance of going top 10.
Photograph has impressed me. I thought I was going to pick number 17. I think that was my prediction on some episode. It's already at number 15 this week on Hot 100. Radio is supporting the song so bad. I'm glad because it's one of my favorite tracks on Multiply. But I think top 10 is hard. I mean, possible 14, 13, I don't know, because I see it almost top 10 right now on iTunes. And I don't know, because I feel it's hard for good for you get to top 10. And it's doing better than some Photograph, so I don't know, I have mixed feelings with it. Let's say at number 12, and that's it.
Okay. So we've had our opinions on Photograph, and the next song that we'll talk about is Fetty Wap's Again, recently released to iTunes, peaked at number 3, after being out on SoundCloud for months. How will it do, and will it go top 10?